what I think is critical, because as far as I'm concerned, and I will put on my teacher's hat, that's where I spent the largest time of my working life as a lecturer at university, a teacher, teaching people management. And this is a case of mismanagement of two very critical issues that are related. There's this notion that at the end of the day, we spoke, the Barbadians, we went across the country. My question is, doing what exactly? Because at the end of the day, if you are consulting with me prior to drafting a piece of legislation, come back to me and say, this is what we are proposing for these reasons. Let us walk you through how it's going to impact you. Because at the end of the day, the legislation that affects public offices. Remember, I made the point that as a category of workers in Barbados, the public sector is the single largest group. My question is, how is this going to impact? And don't, you know, let me put it positively, because as you know, that's how I like to speak. Demonstrate it by giving people some practical information on how this is going to work. Because at the end of the day, people need to know what are the implications. You know, we've talked about, there's so much packed into these two pieces of legislation that a debate on Friday. I think I was on the road at 5 o'clock. That's when CBC brings over the 5 o'clock news on evenings. BLB is 5:30. And if I remember correctly, that debate would have been finished by then. Two bills, you understand, of critical import. And that is what it is. So people need to understand, as I said, you're talking about, and let's park the national insurance and look at the pension reform. What exactly is the situation for public workers? The government introduced contracts some time ago, and when I asked questions, public officers could not help me to understand, because the kind of question I was asking is, if and this is at let's say at the senior level, and the same thing would apply probably for when you're working out pensions and whatever else. If I am a deputy permanent secretary and I take a contract to work, and Caswell, perhaps you can help me understand this, and I take a contract for 3 years as a permanent secretary, and for whatever reason, and I presume in part of that contract you have a clause which says that they can terminate the contract, or you can terminate it. If that is the case, do I go back to my substantive post? What happens to my salary? What happens to my contributions to pension? You see, the point I'm making is that, like those kind of arrangements, this legislation has some serious implications for different categories of workers. And therefore, rather than rush through a bill, to come back and do what has been the standard practice in the last few years, to make decisions, put them in place, and then say, hey, it ain't working, we got to pull back and we'll come again. Stop and talk to people, talk them through this so that they understand. Talk the ministers and MPs through it so that they understand. Mm-hmm. Because I am not hearing in most of the debates that they understand the issues. Mm-hmm. So if they can talk us through those issues, then, you know, but to pass this and to have so many questions, and I am sure that once it is passed and they try to put it in place, there will be some issues. So you know,
yeah, you know, I
go back. You went and you asked questions. Go back and help answer some questions. Provide some answers.
I think people need a lot of you know, people have a lot of questions. I see Winston wants to say something. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, I am going to be the most forward as far as this discussion is concerned, because Ms. McLean, I understand how she, as a former politician, the diplomacy she would use, right? As far as this, what we, the public, think should happen, all right? But I'm going to be straightforward, right? You don't need to ask questions. We don't need for them to explain, because they're going to go about and do it anyway. And they're going to do something that is going to be adverse to us, okay, adverse to our children, and adverse to our grandchildren, all right? They have implemented something which is disadvantageous to us. But when you look at their employment standard, it's a total paradox to what they have implemented for us. All right. So unless we, as Caswell said, and I've been saying this for a long time, do not work for one day and show that we can bring everything to a halt. And if they continue with it until we get what we require, because nobody across the board wants the age of pensions to go to that age. Nobody wants the things that they're implementing. Nobody wants to go about hearing the talk of transparency, yet not actually getting the transparency. They passed a bill when Caswell was not in Senate, him and about 2 or 3 other senators. They eased and did that. No, they're doing the same thing and using the festivities as a kind of a I don't know, as a diversion, so to speak, so they can implement what they're doing. And if we do not do something about it, they will consistently do it. I do not know what is wrong with Barbadians, no. But it looks as if a spell is being worked on the island. You understand? And we need to get up. And I'm going to ask, I've done it before, I'm going to ask people, and we pick a day to come out and stand up and say, listen, come to us, or we will not be accepting this. We will not accept it. Come to us. I'm not propagating any violence, you understand, or any civil unrest or any sort. But the same way that we could have come out and make sure that the vaccines are not mandatory, we can come out and do this. We can do this. We've done it before, and we can do it again.
Do it again. I agree with you. I agree with you. And, this is a call to action. As you said, we understand Ms. McLean can't be a part of this, but I just want to say that we have, listen, let's start to move forward. That's just how I think. So what would we need? Right. You're the trade unionist, Mr. Franklyn. I'm not into anyone. I left my Sunday lay down and rest day. And here I don't want to be talking. This is not a talk shop. We want to plan. How do we plan this sick out and this one day? Alicia says sick out for real. We'll start with one day. What can we actually do something on Wednesday, because they plan to pass it Wednesday? That's the thing about it. What can we do?
You see, the thing is, if you call in sick on Wednesday, they can't do anything because you're allowed to call in sick for 2 days.
So you're saying if you call in sick on Wednesday, they can't do anything. You're speaking to government workers?
I'm speaking to government workers. I'm speaking to any worker in Barbados.
Any worker in Barbados.
Because the Public Service Act allows you to call in 2 days, and the Employment Rights Act allows you to call in 2 days as well. All right, so they're not getting a doctor certificate. So that's the easiest thing to do. Will they do it? I have my doubts.
Listen, we're going to stay positive. Let us stay positive.
I am positive they won't do it.
No. Listen, folks, 524 of us here. How many of you will say on here that you will call in sick on Wednesday because of this issue?
I'm going to push
it's enough to make you really sick, I'll tell you something though, because Maxine asked about the contracts. Only Saturday, yesterday, I see people on Saturdays. I'm poor, so I gotta see people, and they're not fortunate enough I can have weekends off. And a principal came to my office, and that's the question she asked me. The problem here is that government putting contracts in place for public officers, but they're not explaining to the public officers what are the repercussions. Because let's say you are a senior teacher. Let's go as far as a senior teacher. And there's a vacancy for principal. You apply, you do the fancy talking and stuff, and you get the job because you did a really good interview, because you can talk pretty. Then you didn't work out. You get a contract for 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, the people say, I'm not renewing this contract. What will you do now? Go back now and become junior to the deputy the heads of departments and principal know that you were once, it was going to be embarrassing. This public service is supposed to be a permanent service. The politicians are supposed to be temporary. They get 5-year increments. You get a 5-year increment. And one thing this government is doing is trying to make sure that they get their way and everything. Because if you have a public servant who's on contract, he gets the contract in year 1 of the government service. He gets for 3 years. He is now supposed to advise the government on technical issues. But the government wants something done. But he is saying no in his heart. But when his contract due now another couple of weeks, you think he can tell them no? Now, if he were permanent, he can say, no, that's wrong. And these are my reasons. You can't do that when the same people can tell you, well, I'm not going to renew your contract every time you know. So it is not good to have senior public officers on contract because they cannot give the best advice to the politicians. Because most of the politicians don't want good advice and they just want their way. Well, not all politicians, but I mean this group. Right?
Listen,
pension age at 68. My grandmother got her pension at age 68. She was born in 1900. I remember it was $13 or something like that. Tom has lowered that to 65. This group not gonna get back. You realize? That's what happened, you know. It used to be 68 before, and people thought that was too high. It's still too high. I'm not going back there. When I get to 67, I know they complete the circle, but I can't go all the way right back to 68. And I saved this one for the last because I wanted to get you a bit angry. Yes, I'm going to admit I want to make you angry. If you are working as a public officer and you join the service after the 1st of September 1975, and you are getting a pension from the Treasury, when you reach national insurance pension age, your pension from the Treasury is reduced by the amount of money you get from national insurance, except you're an MP.
Can you read that? Read that again. Read that one more time, Mr. Franklyn.
I wasn't reading, but I'll tell you again. Persons who join the civil service or public service, they call it now, after the 1st of September 1975, when they are qualified for pension from the Treasury, and they have a pension from the Treasury, and you're getting your pension from the Treasury, when you then qualify for the national insurance pension, the pension that you're getting from the Treasury is reduced by the amount of money you get from national insurance, except you're a politician. They still get both. They still get both. So they're thinking of everybody pension about themselves. They're getting two, you know. They're getting two. And they're taking away your one. And not only taking away, but giving it longer to get it. They get at 50. You know, people always tell me, Caswell, you should be an MP, you should be a politician. I tell them, I don't want to be a crook.
You know, as a former politician, I was never a crook.
I know that, but I'm not saying that you are, but the people who invited me. Doing that same thing, what they could do.
I think something like this. I think Barbados, I'm saying we. Needs to be some action. There needs to be some action, and I believe that within it's a short time. We don't have to do anything on the streets. You're going to need to get permits, and we're in a holiday period, so just stay home. Just stay home. Listen, we will come back on. Miss McLean probably not going to come back on with this band because this. But
when you're finished, I will say something. But you
listen. We need to get back on here tomorrow night. We need to keep this going. Emmanuel is on. Listen, all the bloggers, everybody, because we need to keep this holiday tomorrow hot. All bloggers get on and call for the day on Wednesday. Every blogger, because they're not going to do it on the radio. They're not going to do it on the television. It's only the internet we have. You see the show? Take it and send it all about. Guys, there has to be a call to action. If not, we're only on here talking, right? You were going to say something else, Mr. Franklin, and then Emmanuel.
No, I was just going to say, hi, Emmanuel. How are you doing? It's good to see you.
I wanted to say something though, Marcia, because unless Emmanuel was talking, let me pause and let Emmanuel.
Yeah, let Emmanuel, since he came on, and I'm going to put the link again for anybody to come on. Anybody, this is a good time. You don't have to turn on your camera. Let your voice be heard. Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Hi, good night. Can you hear me? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Usually I have guests on my platform, never really a guest on somebody else's. This is interesting. Good night to each and everyone. You too, Mr. Franklin, Ms. Ford, and obviously Marcia, Queen, greetings to you. This has been an interesting conversation. I was listening to it for quite some time, and I think we are on the right track in part. And I say in part only because if you think about it, when did national insurance, when did this really start, Mr. Franklin? Was it in 1966?
Well, the bill was passed in 66. It started in actually 1967.
67. But it was officially...
today, the Warden Adams said it, I wrote it down. He said that it was managed effectively or something to that effect. And I said, well, if it was being managed, so why you want to fix it? Why you want to change it? He didn't answer. Because he was saying that it was good, He said creditable performance. I wrote it down.
Credible performance
over here, and yet still they want to fix something that was working creditably. They want to change it. I asked, but why? It ain't broke.
Well, if I may, the reason I asked that question is because I think in order to fully grasp what is really going on is to look at it and review. There's an old African saying, if you want to know what's going on in the road up ahead, you answer one returning. But let's look back a little bit. In 1966, what was one of the most significant things that happened in Barbados outside of national insurance? It was independence. Exactly. So, well, what exactly was independence? You see, if we never fully grasp what happened in Barbados in 1966, we can never really appreciate what the national insurance scam, well, whatever it is, we can never really appreciate what it truly represents. And think about it, for example, people who would have bought into this idea in 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, who would have then qualified automatically because of the age they were at and received a pension from those who are now paying into it, recognize that wouldn't have lasted but so long unless we continue to pay into it. Now, the age limit of people expectancy, life expectancy in Barbados has changed significantly from the days of the Plantocracy, which was about 20, 25, 30 years old, if you're lucky, to now they're asking us to be 60, 65, well, in some cases 68. And you juxtapose that with the Bible, who say you're supposed to live until 70. Understand what they're really saying in a different language is that we want to work you to death. The only other circumstances where you work to death was on the plantation. So if we want to do a juxtapose, let's look at it this way, Mr. Franklin and Ms. Ford and Marcy, I'm sure you can understand this.
Miss McLean.
Miss McLean, Ford, where did that come from? Miss McLean, the reality is that Barbados is still functioning as a plantocracy. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not is irrelevant. And the only way out of it, you have to ask yourself one of two questions. Am I looking for comfortability on the plantation, or am I looking for liberation from the plantation? Because if you don't know which one you're looking for, the idea of staying home, marching, protesting, doing anything, it's going to vary. Because some folks just really want to be comfortable. They don't really want to upset. I don't really want to get into the whole talk about this and that because I got my mortgage, I got my children overseas. I can't afford to upset nobody. And there's others who, might think, what? I don't care about nothing. I ain't paying nothing. I ain't paying nothing. But according to the Bible, we should come out of her, my people. And I've said this on many platforms. The reason why there's only this seemingly one option is that because we won't create our own governing body. Rather than keep begging the plantocracy to make us comfortable with our enslavement, why don't we simply come out and create our own governing body start to support our own, put things in place to take care of our elderly at the age of retirement, at a respectable age, put things in place to take care of our children in the schools and learning environments that doesn't cause them to give up their morality, put things in place to create our own trade, our own currency. We have to go that route if we have to. And let's sustain ourselves. There's plenty of land in Barbados, what they call in Crown land, that we know belong to the people. We don't have to get into the conversation about who own what and what, and asking Mia Motley and her administration to comply with what you are asking. Simply lead them to their own device and simply create our own. And we keep coming back to the same place of asking the Plantocracy to make us comfortable before enslavement. They will never make you but so comfortable. In fact, our citizen yield, a people, anyone, any governing body that desires to keep you from thriving and doing better is looking to enslave you. The reason why they even put this weekend in light of the 2-day holiday and whatnot, it's almost like an insult to the intelligence of Barbadians. And the Prime Servant said, we're ready to come and walk up. So come and walk up. So what they're telling you is that, in fact, there's a play called Caliban. I don't know if you ever heard it, by Shakespeare. It's called Caliban. Most Barbadians probably never heard of it. I don't know, maybe not. But what was said to Caliban is that the only thing you need to do with Caliban is give him some booze, I guess, and a woman, and he ain't gonna remember nothing, man. And I yield with that. We got to be mindful of the times we're in and recognize what they're really looking to do is re-enslave Barbadians in a whole different way. And unless we are honest about this and work towards liberating ourselves and leave Egypt, we're going to be stuck in Egypt with the Pharaoh working and will have no say. And yes, I think both of you said it, and I'm certainly Marcy said it. They're going to work you to death. You will not collect no insurance. It will not be passed on to your family. And trust when I tell you, you are going to die not receiving nothing. And I yield with that, Marcia, for the time.
Yeah. I put you in the green room, but hang around, Emmanuel, if you can. Jen Wiggs is saying that all the public workers in the unions need to address their union leaders and let them know to go and let this administration know that they're shutting down the country if they pass the bills. Mr. You are the trade unionist here. I'm going to defer to you, Mr. Franklyn. The NUPWBWU. I don't know of the other names. You have your union. Is this a good suggestion that the workers who are listening need to go to contact their unions and let them know what their concerns are and what they would want to do? Mr. Franklyn?
Well, that ideally that's what should happen. Okay, but let me explain to you what's been happening with the unions. I remember they had something called the NSRL, which was the most the fairest tax that we had in place. But the merchants didn't like it because they had to pay that money up front. With VAT, they like VAT because they can always steal the VAT. But with the NSRL, it was the most equitable tax. They had to pay it up front. And there was no refunding of it. So they can go and claim it back. So they didn't like it. And those people, merchants, usually people of Caucasians, who are the merchant class, got together with the Barbados Labour Party, demonized Franklyn Stewart and Sinclair over that tax, and get the unions on board. Mind you, when they call me, let me tell you something. Anybody from my union who joined that march would be walking off their job because my union will not support it. I didn't go, and you should see the thing is, and I have seen. Then this government came in and promised, we're gonna get rid of the NSRL, and they did, and then take the taxes off of the merchants and put it on water. Poorest of the poor start having to pay that tax. You're paying $45 for the poor people who used to pay $32 water bill, and you put $45 on it. That is what this government did. And the people say, I can vote for them, so yeah, they can think of it. But the unions supported the government. All the governments, the unions supported. Just recently here at the airport staff, I think 50 of them resigned from NUPW and get vexed over anybody's behavior. My judge got 45 of them as a result, but thank God for small mercies. They resigned and left NUPW simply because the government told NUPW only ask for 3% over the first year and 3% second year. The chairman, I understand, but I wasn't there. The staff told me, the chairman said, well, that's a proposal. You fellas can come with something else, and we will see what else we can do. The union said, no, we ain't doing it. The chairman tell you to go and do it. The chairman of the airport said you're going to do X. And the union said, no, we are not doing it. We can stick with the government tell me to stick to. So that's the problem that you have. The unions have been bought. And I'll tell you something. Mayor Molly is not a fool. She knows how to win friends and influence people. And she went about and she influenced the unions. And she has all of her people in place and vital areas. General Secretary, presidents, and all kind of people of these unions swear their allegiance to her. So they're not going to call it anybody.
Marcy, I wanna ask some questions because I like to think things through from beginning to end, because you're clearly saying we have some issues as Barbadians and so on with the legislation and all that is proposed. Sick out on Wednesday and then do what? What exactly are you asking of government? And I think these are the things we have to work out, because going and standing in the heat and dehydrating yourself on Wednesday, if you went as one of the options, does not necessarily lead to that. What we're saying to the government, what I'm saying certainly, as somebody who, I tell people I am one of 4-generation family. So I am only thinking about me and my son, but of my oldest brother's grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Because if, the point I'm making is, even if we start from the basis that there may be the need for some kind of pension reform, what is informing that? Because I heard, if I didn't hear all he said, but I think I heard the Minister of Labor talking about an agreement with the IMF. What did they agree with the IMF to do? And what is that going to do in relation to us as Barbadians? What impact will it have on us, negative and otherwise? So my thinking is that they need to come to the public and say, this is what I think they need to do. Stick a pin in passing this legislation, because in passing it, they're still going to have a whole set of issues. You say that your plan was to consult widely, or you did that consult widely to what end? Come back and say to people, these are the issues, and let them see how it is going to impact them. Caswell and I had a conversation about public officers and the payment of contributions and so on. Look at that and show people what's happening. When I pay this contribution, what am I getting out of it at the end of the day? This person is saying, Peter is saying that you're unhappy, and you can stick out and be unhappy, but after that, and you stick out and they're standing in Parliament, they pass the bill anyway. So Mr. Earl can tell me some more but I believe that we should be asking some very specific things of government in terms of what we need for them to say and do to demonstrate that they are serious about serving the interests of Barbados.
If I can say something there, Ms. McLean, I think that because a lot of people, they say to us when we go out on the street, why are you going out there in the hot sun and it's not going to do anything? I mean, one of the things that happened, you saw the pressure, us going out there with the children, all of us that went out. You even heard the Prime Minister now saying, oh, we're not going to do that. Not necessarily that we believe her, but the point is that it adds pressure. And I think that that's one of the things that can be done. But in addition to if you want to do the sick out, then it's also to come up with another measure that would then be able to say, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
But in the second, and let's go back to the issue of the children. While you were going out there, you were also articulating what the issues were, what the challenges were. So I'm saying, okay, we go and we stick out on Wednesday. But if, as Caswell said, if you're a public servant, you can call in sick for 2 days. So they may just treat it as, okay, they had there's a hangover from whatever in the private sector. If you sick out on, if you're absent after bank holiday, they dock your pay. The point I'm making is that you have to be as you seek to do that, there's some other critical things that you need to be putting on the table.